Adeline Westwood, 29, never thought her life would shift in a single night, but she woke with a jolt, her heart pounding as her hand touched her head. Her fingers froze. Her long chestnut waves, her favorite feature, were gone. Only rough, uneven pieces of hair about 2 inches long prickled beneath her palm. Before I continue, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, and tell me where you're watching from, because this story will show you how jealousy, insecurity, and cruelty can come from the people closest to you. She shot upright, trembling. Standing in the bedroom doorway of her parents' home in Riverdale County, Vermont, was her mother, Helen Westwood, holding a pair of kitchen scissors like a trophy. "This is justice," Helen said, folding her arms. "Someone needs to humble you." Behind her, Adeline's father, Franklin Westwood, nodded coldly. "Now maybe people will pity you instead of admiring you." Adeline's breath caught. "You did this while I slept," she whispered. Helen smirked. "You've always been too proud. Consider this a reset." But Franklin's voice cut deeper. "Your sister deserves her moment. You've stolen enough attention in your life." Adeline stared at them, her own parents, unable to form words. Her scalp tingled from shock and raw humiliation. She wanted to scream, to collapse, to run, but a strange calm settled over her like fog. They thought they had broken her. They had no idea what she was about to do next. Adeline stepped back from them slowly, as if they were strangers wearing familiar faces. "Why?" she whispered. Her mother shrugged. "Your sister's wedding is tomorrow. She can't shine if you're standing next to her with that hair." Adeline blinked hard. "So you cut it off." Franklin sighed impatiently. "Don't be dramatic. You'll survive." Their casual cruelty struck deeper than the haircut itself. Without another word, Adeline turned and walked toward the bathroom, her hands shaking. She locked the door and slid to the floor, pressing her forehead to her knees as silent tears streamed down her cheeks. Her phone buzzed. It was her aunt, Martha Clark, the only person who had ever treated her like someone worth loving. "Good morning, sweetheart. Ready for the big day?" Adeline stared at the message until her eyes blurred. Her fingers trembled as she typed back. "They cut my hair. All of it. While I slept." The reply came instantly. "What? I'm calling you now." When Adeline answered, her voice cracked. "Aunt Martha, they did it on purpose." Martha's voice turned steel cold. "You leave that house. Right now. Pack your things and come stay with me." Adeline wiped her face. "If I leave, they win." A long pause followed. "Adeline, what are you planning?" her aunt whispered. "Justice," Adeline breathed. A knock rattled the door. "Adeline," Helen called sweetly, "bridesmaid duties start soon." Adeline inhaled deeply and steadied her voice. "I'll be out in a minute." When her aunt asked again if she was sure about staying, Adeline whispered, "They want me embarrassed. They want me silent. I won't give them that." After hanging up, she faced the mirror. The haircut was brutal, slashes, missing chunks, uneven patches. It wasn't grooming, it was humiliation. She swallowed hard and pulled out her phone, searching desperately for an emergency salon. Miraculously, a stylist in Briar Hill City, 10 minutes away, had an opening. She slipped into fresh clothes, wiped her stained cheeks, and stepped back into the hallway. Helen and Adeline's younger sister, Sabrina, waited with smug smiles. Sabrina lifted her chin. "Wow," she said. "You look different." Helen added, "Maybe the stylist can give you a little hat to hide it." Adeline didn't flinch. "I have an appointment. I'll meet you all at the bridesmaids' lunch." Helen frowned sharply. "We don't have time for your vanity." Adeline's voice turned steadier than she felt. "I said I'll meet you afterward." Then she walked past them, spine straight, dignity intact. And for the first time in years, they looked genuinely startled. The salon's bell chimed as Adeline entered. A tall stylist with sharp eyes and bright red curls, Marissa Lane, froze when she saw her. "Oh my, who did this to you?" Adeline took a seat slowly. "My family." Marissa examined the damage, lifting strands with gentle fingers. "This wasn't a haircut," she said. "It was an attack." Adeline's throat tightened. Marissa placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe here." For 2 hours, Marissa worked with surgical precision, snipping, shaping, texturizing, transforming the hacked mess into a stunning, modern pixie cut. Other stylists paused to watch. Clients murmured support. When Marissa finally spun the chair toward the mirror, Adeline gasped softly. She looked powerful. Sleek. Reborn. You don't look broken, Marissa said proudly. You look unstoppable. Adeline exhaled for what felt like the first time since waking. Outside, her friend Lena Whitford waited in her car. When Adeline slid into the passenger seat, Lena's eyes widened. Wow. You look like the CEO of Revenge. Adeline laughed weakly. I'm not ruining the wedding, she said. Just letting the truth speak for itself. Lena smirked. Then tell me how I can help. And just like that, the plan began to form. Quiet, precise, undeniable. On the way to the bridesmaids' lunch, Adeline bought bold earrings, a shimmering hair clip, and makeup that accentuated the strength in her new features. If her parents wanted her ashamed, they'd miscalculated. When she arrived at the restaurant, conversations dimmed instantly. Sabrina's eyes widened in disbelief. Helen looked furious. You were supposed to look plain, she hissed under her breath. What have you done? Adeline smiled softly. I fixed what you broke. Two bridesmaids, Lily and Erin, approached hesitantly. What happened to your hair? Lily asked gently. Before Adeline could speak, Helen snapped. She cut it herself for attention. Adeline turned to the bridesmaids calmly. My parents cut it while I was sleeping. The shock on their faces was instant. Erin whispered, That's abuse. Helen's smile stiffened. Girls, she's exaggerating. Before the argument grew, the groom-to-be, Damien Brooks, walked in. He froze the moment he saw Adeline. What happened to you? He asked, voice low and horrified. Adeline answered without hesitation. Your future in-laws cut my hair. They didn't want me overshadowing Sabrina. Damien stared at Sabrina in disbelief. Is this true? She swallowed hard, looking anywhere but at him. He stepped back slowly, as if seeing them all for the first time. And the truth began to unravel. The wedding preparations continued at the hotel the next morning, but a heavy tension filled the bridal suite long before anyone spoke. When Adeline stepped inside, wearing the bridesmaid dress exactly as instructed, the room fell silent. Her mother inhaled sharply. This is not the look we agreed on, Helen whispered harshly. Adeline raised an eyebrow. You never asked for my opinion. Sabrina marched over, her silk robe swishing behind her. You were supposed to look toned down, she muttered. Not whatever this is. Elegant. Adeline offered calmly. Sabrina flushed. Two bridesmaids, Lily and Erin, exchanged uneasy glances. Adeline, Erin whispered, are you okay? Before she could respond, Helen snapped, she's fine. She did this for attention. But Lily stepped closer. No. Something's wrong. No one cuts their own hair like that. Adeline answered softly, my parents did. The room stiffened. Helen's eyes widened in panic. She's lying. Damien entered moments later, adjusting his tie. When he saw Adeline up close, his expression darkened. This is worse than yesterday, he muttered. Turning to Sabrina, he asked, did you know about this? Sabrina looked cornered. I didn't stop them, she admitted. Damien stared at her as if he no longer recognized her. Quiet judgment settled over the room. And the wedding day began to crack. The wedding planner, Monique Archer, who had been observing in stunned silence, gently touched Adeline's arm. If you need anything at any point, she whispered, give me a signal. Adeline nodded gratefully. As the morning went on, makeup artists fluttered around Sabrina, trying to ease her rising anxiety. She kept glancing at Damien, who avoided her gaze. At one point, Sabrina leaned toward her parents, whispering in a frantic hiss, fix this. She's ruining everything. Frank replied quietly, we'll handle it after the ceremony. But the more they tried to push Adeline into the background, moving her to the end of photos, placing her behind taller bridesmaids, the more Monique corrected them with professional firmness. Adeline belongs in the front row here, she said at one point. Her look photographs beautifully. Helen's jaw tensed. Meanwhile, Damien stepped aside with his best man, James. This isn't normal, Damien murmured, rubbing his temples. Any family that does this, what else are they capable of? James eyed him seriously. Cold feet or clarity? Damien swallowed. Clarity, I think. When the photographer called for the bridal party to line up, Adeline stood tall, her pixie cut shimmering under the soft lights.
Helen glared at her one last time.
Don't draw attention, she whispered. Adeline replied, maybe stop giving people reasons to stare. As the ceremony approached, a strange sense of calm settled over Adeline. She walked with measured steps to the church entrance, where the bridesmaids waited for their cue. The soft murmur of guests filled the air. When the doors opened and the first bridesmaid began her walk, Adeline focused on steady breathing.
Then it was her turn.
She stepped forward, shoulders square, chin lifted. A quiet ripple of whispers moved through the crowd.
People noticed the haircut. They noticed the confidence in her posture. But Adeline didn't waver.
At the altar, Damien watched her with a conflicted heaviness in his eyes. Not admiration, not attraction, but sorrowful respect. When Sabrina finally entered on Frank's arm, the guests turned as expected. But Sabrina's expression was tense, her smile forced. At the altar, Damien subtly shifted away from her, a small movement that said more than words. Throughout the vows, Damien's responses were stiff, clipped, lacking warmth.
Sabrina's voice trembled.
Twice, she shot Adeline a sharp glare, as though blaming her for the tension she refused to acknowledge in herself. When the pastor declared them husband and wife, their kiss was brief, so brief it felt like a formality rather than a celebration.
Even the guests seemed unsettled.
Something was already breaking beneath the perfect wedding facade. After the ceremony, the photographer gathered everyone outside for pictures. Adeline stepped into position, but almost immediately, Helen tried to nudge her behind a taller cousin. You'll block the bride, Helen murmured through clenched teeth. Ariel, the photographer, frowned.
No, she won't.
Back to the front, Adeline.
Frank exhaled loudly in frustration.
Must you make everything difficult, he muttered.
Adeline ignored him.
In picture after picture, the Westwoods attempted subtle pushes, rearrangements, distractions, but Ariel kept restoring Adeline to her rightful place. Her haircut is stunning, Ariel said openly. It adds balance to the lineup. Helen's face tightened in a strained smile. When group photos finally ended, everyone headed to the reception. Adeline found a seat, directly across from her parents. The hall was extravagant, white roses, crystal centerpieces, gold-trimmed linens. But beneath the beauty simmered unspoken conflict. When Frank rose for his speech, he lifted his glass with pride. Today, we celebrate Sabrina, our radiant daughter, our pride, our joy. His speech went on for several minutes, praising Sabrina's beauty, kindness, achievements. Not once did he acknowledge Adeline, who sat quietly at the same table. His refusal to even say her name was deliberate. Guests noticed. Faces subtly shifted. Whispers started. And Adeline sat straighter, knowing the truth was preparing to surface. When Frank finished, Adeline's uncle Harold Weston approached her. He hugged her warmly, then leaned back with confusion. Adeline, what happened to your hair? Last Christmas it was down to your waist. His voice was loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Adeline met his eyes. Helen and Frank cut it off while I was asleep, she said. They thought I'd look too good standing next to Sabrina today. A hush fell around them. Harold stared at her parents. Tell me she's lying, he demanded. Helen laughed nervously. She's exaggerating. We only trimmed it. Adeline calmly pulled out her phone, showing photos of the hacked hair on the floor. This is what I woke up to. Harold's face hardened. Frank. Helen. This is disgusting. Before they could respond, 3 of Sabrina's college friends, Marlene, Ivy, and Kara, approached timidly. Adeline, Marlene said, we're really sorry. Sabrina said awful things about you for years. We didn't know what was real. Ivy swallowed. She told everyone you were jealous, that you were unstable. Helen's face paled. Girls, not now. But the damage was done. Across the room, Damien watched everything unfold, his expression unreadable. He finally walked toward Adeline. Can we talk? He asked softly. Privately. Adeline stepped outside with Damien onto the quiet stone patio. The muffled music and laughter from the reception drifted through the closed doors. Damien rubbed the back of his neck, staring at the ground before finally lifting his eyes to her. I don't even know what to say, he murmured. I feel like I've been blind. Adeline folded her hands gently. You're not responsible for their choices. Damien shook his head. I've heard Sabrina talk about you before, but the person she described and the woman standing in front of me now are not the same. He paused. She told me you were manipulative, jealous,
unstable. Adeline let out a tired breath.
It's easier to villainize me than face the truth.
Damien stared at her hair, his expression tightening. This crosses every line.
Who does this to their own daughter? Before Adeline could respond, the DJ's voice echoed faintly through the doors. Everyone get ready for the bouquet toss.
Damien exhaled.
I need to think. I can't pretend everything is normal.
Adeline nodded.
Whatever decision you make should be for you, not because of me.
He looked at her with genuine respect.
I wish I had met you before all of this.
She turned toward the hall. Come inside when you're ready.
The night isn't over. Inside, Sabrina anxiously paced near the dance floor, clutching her bouquet as guests gathered behind her. When she spotted Adeline returning, her expression tightened with barely concealed irritation.
Get over here, she hissed, grabbing Adeline by the wrist.
People will think I excluded you.
Adeline pulled her hand back sharply.
You don't have to pretend.
Sabrina climbed onto a chair, swaying slightly as she lifted the bouquet with dramatic flair. Ready, ladies, she called. The bridesmaids laughed nervously. Then, far too quickly, Sabrina spun and hurled the bouquet with surprising force directly at Adeline's face. The hard stems smacked her lip, splitting the skin. Gasps erupted around the room. Adeline tasted blood. Sabrina covered her mouth in fake shock.
Oh my gosh, I didn't. If you're still watching, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, and tell me where you're watching from, because what happens next will leave you speechless.
Adeline walked past her without a word. She stepped to the center of the dance floor, lifted the microphone from the DJ booth, and waited until the room stilled. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm. For everyone wondering about my hair, she began, Helen and Frank cut it off while I was asleep last night.
They were afraid I'd look better than Sabrina today.
Silence hit the room like a wave. Helen stood abruptly.
Adeline, stop this right now.
But Adeline held the mic firmly. No.
I've stopped enough.
Adeline's voice didn't tremble as she continued. This wasn't the first time they've hurt me.
It's simply the first time they did it where other people could see the result.
Guests shifted uncomfortably. Sabrina froze, bouquet petals still scattered at her feet. Frank stepped forward, trying to salvage the moment. She's exaggerating.
You all know how dramatic she can be. Dad, Adeline interrupted quietly, you cut your daughter's hair with kitchen scissors in the middle of the night. She pulled out her phone and displayed the evidence again. Photos of the hacked hair, timestamps, screenshots of the salon's urgent repair. Murmurs filled the hall, growing louder. Even the DJ exchanged a stunned look with the bartender. Then Lily, one of the bridesmaids, walked forward. I was here this morning, she said. Helen tried to push Adeline into the back of every photo. They didn't want her seen. Erin stepped beside her. They kept lying about what happened. It wasn't an accident. Helen's face drained of color. Girls, this is a family matter, not when you assault someone, Erin replied sharply. Sabrina's college friends moved closer, avoiding Sabrina's eyes. Marlene whispered, she's been telling lies about Adeline for years. The room became a courtroom, the truth spilling from every corner. Adeline lowered the microphone. I forgive you, she told her parents softly, but forgiveness doesn't mean access. Adeline handed the microphone back to the DJ and walked out of the reception hall, the doors closing softly behind her. The cool evening air met her skin like freedom. A few guests hesitated before following. Lily, Erin, Marlene, even two distant cousins who admitted they had suspected something was wrong for years. You didn't deserve any of that, Lily said, offering a tissue for Adeline's bleeding lip. Erin nodded. You handled it with more grace than anyone else in that room. Adeline exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. I'm just tired of pretending everything's fine. They walked toward the garden lights where small groups of guests whispered, avoiding the hall. A few apologized for not noticing sooner. Others expressed disbelief. Adeline thanked them, though the weight of everything made her voice soft. Then Damien appeared, his tie loosened, his expression devastated. I told Sabrina I need time, he said quietly. I can't unsee any of this. I can't marry someone who thinks cruelty is normal. Adeline searched his face. I never wanted to come between you two.
Damien shook his head. You didn't.
The truth did.
Lena suddenly joined them, slipping an arm around Adeline. Come on, she said gently. Let's go somewhere quiet.
You've done enough for tonight.
Adeline nodded. She felt lighter, but a new ache bloomed in her chest, an ache of release. The next morning, Adeline woke in the hotel room Aunt Martha had booked for her. Sunlight spilled through the sheer curtains, warming her cheeks. Her phone buzzed with messages, apologies from distant relatives, supportive notes from co-workers, even a heartfelt text from her boss. "I heard what happened. I'm so proud of how you handled yourself." Adeline sat upright, absorbing it all. Then a notification caught her eye. Lena had created a private online folder shared only with wedding guests and close family, photos, timestamps, the full documentation of everything that happened. "It's time people knew the truth," Lena had written. Within an hour, the fallout spread. Damien postponed the honeymoon. Sabrina locked her social media accounts. Helen and Frank's friends began withdrawing, canceling brunch invitations and stepping back from committees. By noon, Aunt Martha arrived at the hotel with warm breakfast and an embrace strong enough to anchor Adeline's heart. "You were brave," Martha whispered. "And now you get to choose who deserves to be in your life." Adeline nodded. Therapy sessions were scheduled. Boundaries were drawn. For the first time, she felt the future cracking open gently, like dawn breaking over dark water. She didn't know where this path would lead, but she knew she would walk it with strength, clarity, and people who loved her without conditions. Over the following week, Adeline focused on breathing again, slowly, deliberately, like someone relearning how to live in her own skin. Aunt Martha opened her home to her, giving her a quiet guest room with soft lavender curtains and a view of the maple trees outside. It felt like the first safe place she'd had in years. Every morning, Martha brewed warm herbal tea and said, "You don't owe anyone explanations anymore." Adeline tried to believe it. Her phone, however, didn't stay quiet for long. Sabrina called twice the first day, both times leaving tearful voicemails. "Please, Addie," she sobbed. "You embarrassed me, but I know I hurt you too. Damien isn't speaking to me. Everything is falling apart." Helen and Frank tried as well, their messages alternating between guilt trips and defensive rants. "You misrepresented what happened. You made us look horrible. You owe this family an apology." Adeline didn't respond. Not yet. She spent hours in therapy, unraveling years of conditioning, learning that love wasn't supposed to feel like competition or survival. She found comfort in Lena's constant presence, afternoon check-ins, home-cooked meals, silly jokes to make her smile. One evening, as they sat on Martha's porch beneath the fading sky, Lena nudged her gently. "You do realize," she said, "you didn't just survive that wedding. You reclaimed yourself." Adeline looked out at the trees, breathing deeply. For the first time, she believed it. 2 weeks after the wedding, Adeline received an unexpected email from Damien. The subject line read simply, "I'm sorry." She hesitated before opening it. His message was long and honest. He explained how the wedding fallout had forced him to confront years of excuses he'd made for Sabrina's behavior. He admitted he had ignored red flags because he believed people were supposed to be loyal to the ones they loved. But the hair incident, the cruelty, the lies, the lack of remorse, had shattered the illusion completely. "I should have stopped it. I should have protected you when you told me the truth." He ended the email with, "I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know I filed for an annulment." Adeline stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling an unexpected heaviness settle in her chest, not sadness for Sabrina, but grief for all the years stolen by dysfunction. Later that evening, she sat beside Aunt Martha on the couch, reading the message aloud. Martha placed a hand over hers. "People who grow up in chaos often don't realize they are drowning until someone shows them the surface," she said gently. Adeline nodded. "I don't want revenge anymore," she whispered. "I just want peace." And for the first time, peace didn't feel impossible. As the weeks turned into a month, Adeline began to rebuild the parts of her life that had been dimmed by her family's shadow. She returned to work in Sterling Harbor City, where her colleagues greeted her with warmth and a sense of quiet admiration. Her boss, Ms. Camden, called her into her office one morning. "I've been thinking about your promotion," she said. "Your composure during that ordeal showed leadership. We need someone like you guiding the team." Adeline blinked in surprise. "Are you sure?" "You've earned it," Ms. Camden replied. "Your resilience speaks louder than any resume." The title, Creative Director, felt surreal. On her lunch break, she texted Lena, who immediately responded with a cascade of celebratory emojis and insisted they go out to dinner that night. Over sushi and laughter, Lena lifted her glass. "To your new beginning."
Adeline felt warmth spread through her chest. But life wasn't entirely easy. Messages from her parents continued, pleading one day, attacking the next. Sabrina sent long texts detailing her therapy sessions and how she finally recognized how their parents had pitted the sisters against each other for years. Adeline read them all, but replied only once, "I hope you heal." She didn't have space for anyone else's chaos anymore. Her life was finally expanding instead of shrinking. One Saturday afternoon, Aunt Martha invited Adeline to join her at a support group for adults recovering from emotionally harmful families. Adeline hesitated but agreed. The meeting room was warm, lined with bookshelves and soft lighting. People sat in a circle, sharing stories that felt painfully familiar. Parents who withheld affection, siblings who became rivals instead of companions, childhood shaped by comparison instead of love. When it was Adeline's turn, she spoke slowly, hands resting in her lap. "My parents cut my hair while I slept," she began. A few gasps rippled around the circle. But she wasn't telling the story for shock, she was telling it to release it. She explained the years of favoritism, the silent endurance, the wedding, the moment she finally chose herself. When she finished, the room was quiet before a woman across from her whispered, "You're incredibly strong." Adeline felt her throat tighten, but this time not from pain, rather from recognition. People understood her here. After the meeting, Martha squeezed her arm. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. Adeline believed her. That evening, she sat on the balcony of Martha's home, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft golds. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, solid, rooted, whole. And she knew she was building something new, something entirely her own. As autumn approached, Adeline's life blossomed quietly but beautifully. Her new bob-length hair framed her face with a soft confidence, and colleagues often complimented her radiant demeanor. She had started journaling, hiking, cooking meals with Lena, and saying no without guilt. Every step felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she hadn't realized was missing. One afternoon, she received a letter, handwritten, messy, unmistakably from her mother. She stared at it for a long while before opening it. "Adeline, you made us look terrible. But I suppose you think you were justified. Your aunt has poisoned you against us." The letter spiraled between blame and half-hearted apologies. Frank had scribbled a short note at the bottom, "We're your parents. You owe us respect." Adeline folded the letter calmly and placed it in a drawer, not to revisit the pain, but to remember the boundary she had fought so hard to create. Later that evening, Lena found her sitting by the window. "You okay?" she asked. Adeline nodded softly. "I'm choosing distance. That's my peace." Lena smiled. "You deserve every bit of it." As the room filled with the warm glow of evening light, Adeline realized something profound. She didn't need her parents' approval anymore. She finally belonged to herself. And in that quiet moment, the wound that had once defined her began to close for good. A few days later, Sabrina requested to meet in person. Adeline agreed, but only in a neutral place, a quiet cafe in downtown Sterling Harbor. When Sabrina arrived, she looked different, smaller somehow, her confidence shaken. She sat down slowly. "Thank you for coming," she murmured. Adeline nodded politely. Sabrina took a shaky breath. "I'm in therapy now. Real therapy. Not the kind where Mom tells me what to say or what to believe." She offered a small, sad smile. "It's strange, learning who I am without their voices in my head." Adeline listened, her heart steady but cautious. "I didn't realize how much they compared us," Sabrina continued. "Mom always said you were the special one. Dad said I needed more attention because I wasn't as strong. They turned us into rivals." Her eyes filled with tears. "I blamed you for so many things that weren't your fault." For the first time, Adeline felt the wall between them soften. "Sabrina," she said gently, "I don't hate you. I never have. But I need distance and honesty." Sabrina nodded quickly. "I understand. I'm not asking for us to be close. I'm asking for a chance to grow. And maybe, one day, rebuild something healthier." Adeline reached across the table, offering a tissue. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. As winter settled over Sterling Harbor, Adeline's career flourished. Her team thrived under her leadership, and she found herself genuinely excited about each new project. Colleagues admired her calm authority and creative instincts. One snowy morning, her boss stepped into her office with a grin. "The board reviewed your campaign results," she said. They want you to lead the new national initiative.
Adeline inhaled sharply. Me?
Yes, you, Ms. Camden replied warmly. You've proven yourself again and again. That evening, Adeline met Lena and Aunt Martha for dinner at their favorite coastal bistro. They toasted to her growth, her boundaries, and her peace. You're glowing, Lena teased, raising her glass.
Martha smiled with proud eyes.
It's amazing what happens when someone finally steps into the life they deserve. Adeline laughed softly, warmth blooming in her chest. She still received occasional letters from her parents, some angry, some pleading, but she no longer felt shaken by them. Therapy had taught her something essential. Closure wasn't something given by others, it was something built quietly within oneself. She chose not to respond, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. For the first time in her life, her days weren't shaped by fear or comparison. She belonged to a world that welcomed her instead of shrinking her. Spring arrived with soft breezes and early blossoms, and Adeline found herself embracing new experiences: painting classes, weekend trips, volunteering with youth mentorship programs. One afternoon, she was invited to speak at a local community seminar about resilience. Standing before a room full of people, she shared her journey with honesty and gentleness. You are not defined by what was taken from you, she told them. You are defined by what you choose to rebuild. After the session, several young women approached her, sharing fragments of their own struggles, families who didn't listen, relationships that dimmed them, dreams they had been too afraid to pursue. Adeline listened with compassion. Later, as she walked home beneath the budding trees, she felt something shift inside her. Her story wasn't just a wound, it was a lantern for others. That evening, Sabrina sent a short message: I'm working hard.
I hope you're okay.
Adeline replied simply, I hope you're healing.
Nothing more needed to be said.
They were two women growing in different directions, no longer bound by the old, toxic script. For the first time, Adeline imagined a future where they might meet again not as rivals but as two people who survived the same storm. As months passed, Adeline's new life grew deeper roots. She moved into a sunlit apartment overlooking the harbor, decorated it with plants and soft-colored art, and filled its rooms with laughter from friends who genuinely cared. Lena helped her paint the living room one weekend, streaking her cheeks with white paint until they were both breathless with laughter. Aunt Martha visited often, bringing fresh pastries and new books for Adeline's growing collection. One quiet Sunday morning, Adeline sat on her balcony, sipping chamomile tea as seagulls circled lazily over the water. She opened her journal and wrote, I finally feel safe. The weight that had followed her for years no longer clung to her shoulders. She had learned to recognize red flags, to cherish her own voice, and to invest in relationships built on kindness rather than obligation. Occasionally, she still thought about the wedding, the hair, the whispers, the public unraveling. But instead of anger, she felt gratitude. That day had been brutal, but it carved a path toward freedom she may never have chosen otherwise. She no longer wished her past had been different. She was simply thankful that her future was hers to shape. On the 1-year anniversary of Sabrina's wedding, Adeline found herself walking along the quiet pier at sunset. The sky glowed with shades of gold and rose, and the air tasted faintly of salt and new beginnings. Lena joined her, leaning against the railing.
It's been quite a year, she said softly.
Adeline nodded. More than I ever expected. They watched the waves lap against the wooden posts, soft and rhythmic.
Adeline sighed. You know, I used to think family was defined by blood.
But now I know it's defined by behavior.
Lena smiled.
And you chose the right people. Adeline looked out at the horizon and felt a warm, steady confidence settle over her. Something she had fought for, bled for, rebuilt from the ashes. Her parents still lived their lives, unchanged, unwilling to confront their own shadows.
Sabrina was slowly healing, finding her voice bit by bit. And Adeline? She was thriving.
She had reclaimed her identity, her joy, her independence. She had become a woman who no longer bowed to cruelty, who no longer hid in the corners of her own story. She straightened, inhaling the crisp evening air. I rose, she whispered. That's all that matters. And with that simple truth, Adeline walked forward, toward a life she had built with her own 2 hands, unbroken, unashamed, and beautifully free. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, your worth is never defined by the people who tried to dim your light.
Keep rising.